So when building out multi-agent orchestrations, we have two concepts that we can use. We have the idea of a handoff and the idea of agent as a tool. These come into play when you are dealing with multi-agent orchestrations. And at the face value, they seem quite similar, but there are some aspects that you need to be aware of when working with these. Something like actually caught me up, and I had to basically look into it a bit more to figure out what was going on. And so I'm basically creating this video to highlight the differences between the two and when you might need to use which. So to kick it off, let's just clarify definitions. Yeah. So a handoff is when you delegate responsibility to another agent. Okay. So you have an agent. Yeah. When you do a handoff from one agent to the other, you basically just take all the responsibility that exists within the first agent and you pass it along to the next agent. So now the next agent is responsible for responding to the user, not the first agent anymore. The agent as a tool is a bit different in the sense that it is an agent, but it's encapsulated within a function/tool call. So it does actually report back to the agent that initiated that tool call to begin with. So those are the two main, those are different definitions for each. Let me break down what a handoff looks like visually, so you can kind of see that. If this thing loads, there we go. So consider that we have some sort of conversation history, yeah? So we can draw a box. Yeah. So we have a session. This is a user message. This is the assistant message, and so on and so forth. It just keeps on going, right? And this is content, actual chat messages, and this is your convo history, right? The idea of the handoff is that the agent will take this convo history and pass it along to the next agent. Check that drawing. Right, so this agent 2, let's call it A2, will now have access to the conversation history up to that point. And now agent 2 is fully responsible for responding back out to the user. Okay, so it doesn't actually go back to, let's say this was agent 1, not AI, agent 1. So that's the key differentiation here. Okay, so handoff is when one agent gives all responsibility to the next agent, and it might do that based on analyzing the user's request and determining, okay, which of those agents that it can hand off to is more specialized in that area and should handle that request. The thing with the agent as a tool approach is more so you have an agent. So let's draw that agent again. Right? And the agent has a tool. Right? Let's see if I can draw a spanner. Wow, that was a terrible spanner. Anyway, maybe a hammer? Yeah, forget it. That's a tool though, okay? That's a tool, but that tool is, let's say, it's encapsulated within another agent, okay? The key difference here is that because it's a tool, and if you remember how tools work with LLMs, it accepts input parameters only, okay? So there is no conversation history being passed into this. Only the input parameters. So you can specialize this a bit more. You can basically say that, okay, this particular agent as a tool accepts, 2 or 3 input parameters that pertain to some particular thing, right? It doesn't have access to this long conversation history. And the second thing is that it reports back. Okay, so it reports back to that initial agent that invoked that tool call. So those are the two main differences. Okay, if we were to, let's break it down and see how it looks like in a multi-agent workflow. So right off the bat, you will see two clear distinctions between the diagram on the left and the diagram on the right. The first one being with the handoff is that, let's see if I can draw this. This agent, yeah, is the same level as this agent, and this agent. Okay, that is why in the handoffs diagram there is no tree structure to kind of highlight the hierarchical structure. Okay, because with a hierarchical structure, like the agent as a tool, you know, these are like sub-agents. You can consider them as sub-agents. And I guess you could do so as well with a handoff, but they're not really sub-agents. They're more like complementary agents, okay? Like agents that you cooperate with, but they're in the same level as you. They're in the same expertise as you, somewhat, right? Okay. But the orchestrator here has authority when it comes to agent as a tool. That has the authority, and that basically says, okay, agent 2, do something, and then come back to me, which you can see in the arrow there, right? And again, it can do that for agent 3, agent 4. So that's how the agent as a tool works in the multi-agent orchestration. With the handoffs, it's different, right? So the handoffs is like, you have agent 1, and that could be your triage agent, your router / orchestrator. And then agent 1 determines, okay, where do I need to hand off this user's request? To which agent do I hand off to based on the user's request? So you might think, okay, agent 2 is most relevant. Now, agent 2 is the main agent at that given point, right? Moving forward from that point, agent 2 is the main agent. And look, agent 2 might have a handoff to agent 3, right? So you can have some complex coordination going on here. But the key distinction is that in a handoff, the agents are in the same kind of hierarchy, but they just, you know, pass responsibility to each other. Agents as a tool is more of like a hierarchical structure, where there's actual authority and, you know, you report back to it. And agent 1 is the one that kind of responds back to the user, not agent 2. Okay. So how do you actually develop intuition as to when to use which? And I think the key thing to ask yourself when designing these AI agents and multi-agent orchestrations is to ask, does the agent need to know the whole conversation history, right? Because again, at the face value, handoffs and agent as a tool they look like the same thing, right? You're basically giving it, you're calling another agent to do another thing, to do something, right? And it's like, it can be seen as like sub-agents, right? But the difference is that crucial point, which is that handoffs maintain the whole conversation history, and they are then the main agent that responds back, right? So you need to ask yourself, does my AI agent, if I want to do handoffs, you know, so is your AI agent need to know the whole conversation history? That's the first, right? If not, and if it could be scoped, then maybe agent as a tool is a good approach. And I can break it down here as well. So go for agent as a tool if, number 1, your task is self-contained. So like I said before, you know, that task, you just need some specific input parameters. There's no need for the whole conversation history, and those input parameters can be inferred by the LLM. So go for that. Number 2 is privacy and security. So there might be a situation where the conversation history has some sensitive data, and this particular task might be calling a third-party API or something along those lines. And so you might want to tailor what input goes into that agent as a tool. So that could be another option, because if you do a handoff, then the agent that now takes control has access to all of that, right? So you need to consider those. And then performance and cost optimization. So this one's quite crucial, because if you consider the fact that your context window will grow as the conversation continues with the agent, the LLM will need to process all of that with the new requests that come in the future, right? And so obviously your performance will take a hit, right? It's going to take longer to process because it needs to read in more input tokens. And so, and your cost will go up obviously because you're using more tokens as a result. So yeah, if you realize that, okay, this particular task I need to do, I don't need it to know everything, and actually it's a burden if it knows everything, because you're gonna lose out on performance and cost is gonna go up, then agent as a tool is probably a better idea. Handoffs. So go for handoffs if, you know, there is ambiguous references that need resolution. So it's very common that when users interact with an agent, they really interact with it in like a natural language in a way. It's where there's like a lot of nuance, right? Where it's like, the user asks for something, agent responds back, and then the user kind of implies like a follow-up question that has that context already in place, but you know, they don't actually explicitly mention that. So in that case, that agent having the full conversation history is useful, right, to determine what to do next. Context builds incrementally, so obviously, you know, the agent will have more context, so it responds better. Just basic AI engineering, which is like context engineering, like more context, better outcome, right? And then yeah, quality depends on conversational nuance. So that was kind of a breakdown of handoffs versus agent as a tool. It can be easy to mix them up, okay? But the key thing to consider is that the handoff maintains the conversation history, whereas the agent as a tool doesn't. I hope this short video was useful to you guys. If you enjoy this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Comment if you have any suggestions on what you'd like me to discuss or talk about next, and catch you in the next one. See ya.